Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Today, we'd like to talk about some of the implications of our accelerating move to the digital world. Something that was mandated by COVID in the last 18 months, but it's a trend that's been going on for really years. And so we asked a number of questions about how customers, consumers were dealing with that move, what was working, what wasn't, and the same thing from a vendor perspective. What were things that were working well and what weren't? And so my name is Mike Tuchen. I'm the CEO of Onfido. Onfido is a digital identity company that helps connect consumers' real world physical identity with their digital identity. And that helps unlock all of the new digital services. And I'm here with Ben King from Okta.
Thanks, Mike. To introduce myself, yes, my name is Ben King. I'm the Regional Chief Security Officer for the EMEA region at Okta. To introduce Okta briefly, we're the world's leading independent cloud identity provider. We're platform and technology agnostic. As such, we connect the right people to the right tech at the right time in the right context, without trying to limit what people or organizations can achieve using the technology of their choice. As you can imagine, it's been a busy time for us post-pandemic in a remote-first world, but it's now more important than ever to secure people, organizations, and communities in the world we find ourselves in. So plenty to do, and a real pleasure to be here today.
Super, so let's dive in. So the pandemic was a crash course for users and businesses in moving to digital. And for customers, we had to get used to living our lives digital as the physical world came to a screeching halt. And as life to go on, we just simply had to start doing things digitally that we'd never done before. And the same thing for businesses. If they didn't already have a digital program, they had to accelerate that or really start one from scratch. And so to understand how that transition has worked and what customers are looking for now going forward, we interviewed 5,000 customers in the US, in the UK, in France, Germany, and the Netherlands, and asked a number of questions about how that move to digital is meeting their expectations and what were areas that they were able to trust vendors and what were areas they're concerned about. So what were some of the things that we learned?
So this is exciting research, and here's the overarching finding we're going to drill into today, that customers are increasing their trust of online channels, brands, and transactions. And this sounds quite simple, but has really big implications and makes sense intuitively as well from a macro level. We've had employees pushed into a remote world where they need to be trusted by their employers. We've had consumers pushed into remote consumption of goods and services needing to trust the brands they're interacting with. And with this shift has come a sustained change in behavior from consumers, and trust has followed. In fact, 1 in 2 customers feel more comfortable using online services than they did pre-pandemic. And I suspect there's plenty who were always comfortable and some who will never be. But for the majority, extended exposure to online consumption has led to familiarity and now increased trust. To look further into the detail of the research here, we find 90% of consumers are comfortable accessing services online. The survey tells us this figure is roughly half very comfortable and half comfortable at 48 and 41% respectively, with 7% uncomfortable and 3% very uncomfortable. Now, drilling into what makes this 10% uncomfortable with online experiences is of what's of most interest to me. We've got 2 key takeaways here. Firstly, 61% have trust issues with their data, and 38% are concerned with convenience, their time, finding a physical interaction easier, less confusing, or quicker, as the case may be. Now, as a security professional myself, I find the data concerns really interesting. It's often been said that trust arrives on a bicycle and leaves in a Ferrari. That's to say, trust is very hard and slow to gain, but incredibly easy and fast to lose. Now, regarding data concerns from consumers, this also breaks down into two subsets. Firstly, concerns around data ethics. Can a company be trusted to not sell or misuse a consumer's data in a way that the consumer doesn't consent or agree to? And secondly, can a company be trusted to secure that data, not lose it accidentally or inadvertently to criminals as a result of a data breach or a security incident? These are the two fastest ways to lose digital trust, ethics and security, but they're also the two best ways to build and maintain trust if they're done right. Customers are demanding fast, frictionless interactions and experiences, but at the same time, they want businesses to manage these experiences in an ethical and secure manner. So establishing digital trust is a balance of enough friction to create reassurance, but not frustration. By making identity the core of every interaction, businesses can ensure smooth, secure, privacy-preserving online experiences, and this in turn will drive customer trust and loyalty. Mike, any thoughts on this one before I hand back?
You know, it's interesting. That really mirrors some research that we did last year that was, for that research, specific to the onboarding moment. And what we saw then was very similar, that 50% saw that that their trust in data was their most important concern. And so it's true really all across the digital life cycle that you really need to establish trust with a consumer that you're going to keep their data secure and you're going to keep their data private and treat it ethically. So I think that is a resounding finding that we've now seen correlated multiple times. But one of the next questions that we asked was, you know, although this move to online was born of necessity as the COVID really accelerated the shift, the big question is it here to stay? Did it accelerate this long-term trend and we're now off at a higher level, or was it a one-time blip? And customers would say, hey, you know, that was okay, but boy, I would really love to do a lot of this stuff back in the physical world. So let's dive in. What we found was that trust used to be associated with size and physical presence. And you know, think about going into a bank. Of course, there's the brand of the bank, but there were a lot of other physical cues that you would read to say, would I trust this as a place to put my money? You look at the facade. You look at when you walk in, you look at the size of the space, you look at the fittings in the space, you look, I kid you not, at the thickness of the vault, which is always on display in the back. And for all these things, you start to get a sense of, is this place safe? And of course, there are all the other cues. Established in 1901, you know, 1,000 branches across 100 companies or countries. So all of those things are things that you look for, but most of them actually are meaningless in the digital world.
You're taking me back there, Mike. I spent 11 years in banking, and a branch experience was what it was all about. But trust in branch experience is being replaced by trust in brand experience, along with trust in security. A frictionless digital experience means more than an established bricks and mortar presence established in 1901, as you say. Digitally native businesses and a competitive economy have squeezed profit margins, resulting in many organizations ditching physical spaces as trust online grows. This is the death of the high street, as much publicized in the media, and as I'm sure most of us have unfortunately seen as we walk around. Customers increasingly want fast or near real-time access, which they don't get with a branch-based service. So these branches are becoming increasingly redundant for so many transactions that consumers want to undertake. Customers across all regions and geographies trust digital experiences enough now to want to perform a range of account actions online. The digital experience really is the key differentiator now for most businesses.
That it really is a critical point, that the physical presence and many of the other attributes that have been critical over the last 100 years, many of them don't translate. And there's some new capabilities. This trust and security and privacy and ethics and convenience and speed are the new keys to the realm going forward. So these are new capabilities that companies need to make sure they get, and attributes that their brands need to start standing for going forward in this digital world. So we asked customers, do they want to sign up for a new account online, or would they prefer to go back and do it in person? And not too surprisingly, across really every industry, they want to do it online. 50% in banking, 60% in healthcare and telemedicine, and 70% in the telco world. And we'll drill into more of this in just a second. But their expectations weren't just about starting the conversation, starting the relationship online. They want to be able to do ongoing transactions. So 7 in 10 want to approve banking transactions online. 80% want to be able to change account details online, which, if we think about it, not too surprisingly, you can now do it on your smartphone wherever you are, whenever you are. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to travel. You don't need to wait for opening hours. And so that convenience factor, really is dramatic. And so the question then is, if that's this overwhelming preference to do it online and take advantage of this convenience, then what does a good experience look like? When we talk about convenience, what does that mean? And not surprisingly, we talked about not traveling, not being limited by opening hours. Instant access is another one. Think about the just profound nature in which we all started getting smartphones, but now being able to access your entire world online wherever you are and get it instantly, that's a critical new benefit. One of the other things that we're starting to see at a lower percentage, is around the 25%, are some of those new capabilities we just talked around security and privacy and being in control of your data. And so now customers are saying they feel safer doing it online. They feel like they're better in control of their data online. So all of these new attributes, new capabilities that customers need to bring are starting to show up in the research as well. So now the question is, with that overwhelming support for doing things online, do they want to go back and start doing it more in person? And the answer is, by and large, no. There's very little desire across most sectors to go back and do things in the physical branches anymore. So in banking, 77% said no, they're very satisfied or satisfied to do it online. That held true in car rentals and telecommunications as well. To me, the one that was surprising here is healthcare at 69%. I mean, what's absolutely remarkable to me about that is, think about all the things that you need to do in healthcare that you really need to do in person, right? Getting a blood draw, having someone like examine, your joint, or take your temperature, all the things that are, hard to do virtually, and yet customers really had this very strong preference to doing it online. So that to me was really eye-opening. But there's a caveat. The question really is, how fast do they want it? And the answer is pretty fast. For an initial opening, for an onboarding or account opening experience, the tipping point was 10 minutes. 2/3 to 70% want to do everything in less than 10 minutes. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because the alternative that customers have been used to for many years has been, if they have to go do it physically in person, almost undoubtedly they won't even get there in 10 minutes, much less get it entirely done. So not surprising that 10 minutes is seen as a measure of goodness. Now, I wouldn't be at all surprised if this starts to compress in the coming years. If 10 minutes is okay now, then a couple of years from now, that might turn into 5 minutes, that might turn into 2 minutes. But to me, the bottom line is this timeliness is a real important benefit that customers are really placing a lot of value in.
This really resonates with me as well, Mike. And obviously, we're all consumers at the same time, and we're all patients from time to time needing healthcare. Really interesting stats. Personally, I'm surprised at 10 minutes. I would put this well below 10 minutes myself for a positive customer experience, but it might just me being inherently impatient. From the consumer's perspective, trust with time is as important, if not more so, than trust with data. That's what this survey data is telling us. That's something I disagree with personally as a security leader, but I really do understand the sentiment. As the effects of a customer experience, whether they're seamless and superior, or whether they're an atrocious experience, are something that a customer is going to interact with regularly, frequently, all the time. It's going to impact them. Whereas the pain caused by a data breach or a security incident at a company is probably going to be a bigger impact to them, but happen much less frequently, hopefully, every couple of years at the most. So as I'd say in a risk world, it's a trade-off of impact versus likelihood, and it's not surprising when you think about it that what impacts the customer the most is what they're doing every day.
Right, I think that's right on. And I agree that for those of us techies, we're more impatient than average, and our expectations are far faster than this. But even for the broader consumer world, when it came to doing ongoing things, so not just the initial experience, but doing ongoing transactions like approving a banking transaction, they want to do it in less than 3 minutes. So they're willing to put up with more time up front to establish that relationship, but they really start to value that convenience and speed on an ongoing basis.
Right, so this is really interesting stuff. I want to delve into the next part of the research here, and the section is trusted omnichannel experiences are now table stakes for organizations wanting to compete in the post-pandemic world. So let me explain. Next slide, please. What we're showing here is a chart of device usage by age group to enable customer experiences. Obviously a range of devices for a range of people. Perhaps unsurprisingly, smartphone leads the way for youth and for many customers, but it's replaced with computer, whatever that is in today's age, as age increases. We've got some tablet preference as well, and no doubt we'll see a change in device categorizations in future as devices themselves evolve. This is useful if a target market for an organization is age defined or age aligned, but if not, and if customers are from multiple brackets here, what we need to know is that customers expect online businesses to provide access to services via their preferred channel. And this is an expectation they've become used to from many established brands in the online space today. Now, in fact, there's a survey question here to confirm that expectation. The research shows that 9 out of 10 customers agree businesses should allow access via whatever channel suits their needs. And personally, I'm not sure what the remaining 1 out of 10 is thinking here. I guess they've grown up in a world where they're used to not getting their way. The chart here again gives us a breakdown by age grouping for additional insight, if that's useful. And now we can realize that providing access across channels, sorry, back one slide. While businesses want to provide access across channels on multiple devices, it's a great ambition. Businesses are falling short of this, and that's for a few reasons. Either they're not enabling this access as demanded by customers in their preferred channel, or they're failing to deliver the experience consistently or seamlessly across channels. And here we've got a really interesting finding, possibly the most interesting for me. 7 out of 10 customers surveyed were blocked from accessing services during their digital experience in the last 12 months, and 23% reported they were being blocked with high frequency. I've got a few theories here. I suspect the flight to remote and the rapid scaling of digital businesses to match left many organizations with technical debt or security debt that has got in the way of them getting this right, whether it's in terms of processes on the digital channel or processes on the back end. Likewise, many consumers have individual identities, often for multiple services or every service they're using online. And this identity sprawl, either in the consumer space or on the organizational side, isn't optimal. The identity sprawl is the enemy of good experience. This approach doesn't scale, and as we transact more and more online, what we need is a robust digital identity, ideally a single digital identity, which is what we use as we process through the online experience. And this is to both secure our digital selves, but also to enable that seamless experience customers are demanding. You got thoughts on this one, Mike?
Yeah, clearly that dichotomy where you have 90% of customers saying they're happy and would prefer to access services online, but 23% saying they're blocked a lot, that's really the opportunity. That's what we need to fix to allow customers to have that seamless experience, to get the convenience that they also strongly value.
I totally agree. I'd love to see that stat personally by industry as well, because I think some industries do this well and some industries just are atrocious. You know, every time I need to call a telecommunications provider, I just have a terrible time. Anyway, here's the next horrific stat. 35% of customers feel they would find it difficult to access their bank if their device was missing. Let me break that down. 1/3 of customers feel tied to their device. The reasons being 54% are storing all their passwords on that device, 42% wouldn't know how else to access their account, and 24% are reliant on the device for facial recognition. This is not a good state of affairs, and it's destined to end badly sooner or later as that device is lost, misplaced, or accidentally destroyed. The way around this is for organizations to adopt a zero trust security approach where customers have to establish their identity regardless of device or password or any single factor. Zero trust security dictates we use a variety of factors to strongly authenticate a user before they can access resources required. We can authenticate using something they know, their username or password, something they have, their device, a security key or token, and something they are. This is the biometric answer, the facial recognition or the fingerprint. This means we can increase security, reduce friction, and we can do that using a combination of single sign-on technology and MFA, multi-factor. This removes the dependence on a single factor like a device when it's no longer convenient. Now, while I'm on the topic of zero trust, I wanted to quickly show this chart, which is from some earlier research Okta put out, which details the rise of zero trust security since the pandemic began. We've been doing this research for the last 3 years, as you can see, and it's showing, despite zero trust being debated as a deperimetization concept by the Jericho Forum as far back as 2003, 2004, Forrester coining the network security term in 2010, Google released their Beyond Corp zero trust strategy in 2014, which is when the media really picked up on the term, and Gartner released their zero trust Carter framework in 2018. Despite all of that, in 2019, only 16% of organizations we surveyed had implemented or were planning to implement zero trust initiatives in the next 12 months. Now in 2020, as the pandemic hit, obviously there was a change here. Our survey response rose to 40% of organizations implementing zero trust strategies. And in 2021, mid-pandemic, this has risen to 90%. That's to say 90% of organizations have landed on zero trust security as their consensus solution to solve the security problems we face today. There's no doubt that identity is key to establishing both convenience and security of digital services. But how do consumers want to prove their identity? This comes back to the mix of factors I've been discussing and absolutely can be done in a passwordless way, especially as we ramp up more secure, more modern factors like biometrics. Any thoughts on that one, Mike?
Yeah, so we went and asked exactly those questions. When digital processes fall short and they're blocked from access to services, how do they want to prove their identity? How do they want to, what methods do they want to use, and what are they most comfortable with? And here's what they told us. Many customers experienced digital identity verification for the first time in the pandemic. 90% said they would use a photo of their identity document again. And you know, the way that works is very similar to what your companies or what people have been doing for decades in the real world, right? If you want to open up a bank account or rent a car or check into a hotel room, you pull out your wallet, pull out your identity card, and someone checks it for you. And now all of that stuff you can do online with a smartphone. And now it turns out the checking process is being done through AI and machine learning automatically. It's done a whole lot faster and a lot more accurately, but it's a process that everyone's familiar with from the real world. So it's not that surprising that they were comfortable with a simpler and more streamlined version of doing it online. But we also asked them how comfortable they were using biometrics. And it turns out that 57% have used more biometrics over the last year. And it's not too surprisingly, because for anyone that's used a modern smartphone, certainly one from Apple, the way you unlock it these days is by using your face as a biometric. And now more and more apps on the in the App Store are hooking into that. So logging into my bank account online, logging into my investing account, logging into my my hotel reservation app, all of that stuff is now hooked into Apple's Face ID. And so for all customers that are in that ecosystem, it's becoming a normal part of their everyday life, and they're increasingly comfortable with it. So we asked them how they felt, and they found biometrics convenient, 8 and 10, and 8 and 10 also found it secure. So that when Ben was talking earlier about the importance of both security and convenience, it looks like biometrics are really scoring well on both of those. People find it convenient, simple, you don't have to remember anything versus passwords. It's fast and easy, and it's seen as very secure as well. And so we then asked them to compare to other forms of authentication. And by and large, they preferred biometrics versus pretty much everything else. 70% versus a password, for example. 60% versus using an ID credential. The ones that were most amazing to me, only 64% would prefer biometrics as opposed to taking documents to a branch. I mean, wow, why isn't that 100%? That one blew me away. The other one that blew me away is 59% versus taking a call from a call center. Remember those, where people ask you, which of these addresses sound familiar? Which of these cars have you owned? All those questions, which for me start getting borderline creepy, saying, how on earth would this company know this about me? 59% said they'd prefer using biometrics. So I think, to me, the acceptance is impressive, at around about 2/3 across all different factors. But I'm actually surprised that it's not even more. I'm not surprised, a little surprised it's not even close to 100% personally. And so what are some of our key takeaways?
Let me jump into these. I'll start on number one. The first one for me is, if the last 18 months have taught us anything at all, it's that an organization's key differentiator is their digital offering now, not their online presence, not that bricks and mortar branch we were talking about earlier. Customers are increasingly trusting digital interactions to purchase goods and services. We've seen that from our research data today. The world is digital, and the takeaway for me is that organizations need to understand this shift, take advantage of this shift in an omni-channel, customer-centric way to ensure their success.
Yeah, and as we talked about, customers care about both convenience and security. And so, we talked about the 10-minute breakpoint for the first experience and 3 minutes or less for ongoing experiences. So the key for everyone is to deliver secure, seamless, frictionless experiences that show your trust with both customers' data as well as their time.
Excellent. Look, the third one for me, there's a misconception, and this is personal for me as a security leader, there's a misconception that security is the enemy of user experience. In fact, modern security frameworks can enhance security and also the user experience at the same time. Like 90% of global organizations currently, I recommend considering tackling this approach with an identity-centric zero trust security strategy, investing where needed to pursue these outcomes. Absolutely, this can be passwordless if that's the way you want to go, and passwordless for me personally is a great goal to have. We should kill the password. It's all about convenience for the consumer.
And finally, the last big takeaway we had is that biometrics are an increasingly trusted factor in establishing your digital identity and as part of an ongoing multi-factor authentication. So I think the key takeaway for all of us, use biometric authentication like what we do at Onfido as a convenient, secure factor and one of the pieces of your underpinning your zero trust strategy. And so with that, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. And thank you, Ben, for a great conversation. We look forward to doing a lot more together with you and the team in the coming months and years.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a blast to share the stage with you. And thanks everyone for dialing in.